So I was saying that when I saw your book, I discovered a book somewhere, and it led me to Amazon, and I read the premise and everything, and I'm like, why? I wanted more people to write on the subject, and I'm like, we know nothing about this thing. I immediately purchased your book, started reading it, and Abhay, as I was telling you, yesterday over phone, it's a great loss. It's a great loss. After completely reading a book, I realize what Nalanda did for the world in the segments and the categories. And I'm like, we know nothing about it. As Indians, we know absolutely nothing about it. And it's a shame. There should be mandate. इनको ये history books में डालना चाहिए.
बिल्कुल.
There should be a subject. This is unfair. We are losing out on so many things. What do you have to say on that? What do you think? What's your opinion on this?
I think, the greatest tragedy is, of course, beside the fall of Nalanda, is forgetting of Nalanda, So who were the great masters of Nalanda, who really made a huge difference? What were their contributions? We have forgotten all these. And it took me to dig out all the information, to put it all together, to tell this narrative of how Nalanda shaped our modern world. So I think this consciousness to know our own heritage, to know our own past, I think this is losing this consciousness, this is, I think, a tremendous loss. Besides, of course, the loss of Nalanda.
And I think that's what compelled you or pushed you to write a book on the subject. That's how did the thought come up to your mind? Because you have written a lot of poetry. Now to write a prose and to do a non-fiction heavily based on research, how did you decide this subject?
Right. Well, so first of all, that I realized that I myself don't know anything about Nalanda. Though I come from there.
You come from there.
So I am from Nalanda, but nobody really taught me about in detail about Nalanda, what actually who founded it, when was it founded, why was it founded, and so on. So people only knew that there were 10,000 students studying once, and that also happened because of the translations of the writings of Xuanzang, the Chinese traveler. We don't find, the mention of Nalanda in as a university, in any Indian text. So it's actually, it takes a Chinese to do that, And then the Britishers came. Alexander Cunningham comes there, and he starts systematic excavations of the site. So Archaeological Survey of India is founded. So all this, it took foreigners actually to come to Nalanda and to write about it and to dig it, So that's really tragic. And though I am from Nalanda, I had no idea about the two great sons of Nalanda, Sariputra and Mogglayana, actually, who are actually the architects of, this great Mahavihara being founded there.
And Mahavihara loosely translates to university, right?
No, Mahavihara means a great monastery.
Great monastery. Acha, Vihara is a monastery, Maha means great.
Great, yes. So Nalanda is actually a Mahavihara. So if you will read the book, everywhere I have written Mahavihara.
Yes, not university. It's everywhere it is Mahavihara.
Yes. So the concept of university, it's actually originates at Nalanda.
Yes.
But it is not called a university. We get that term from somewhere else. So university as a word, I mean, it's a foreign word, it comes to us, and we translate it as Vishwavidyalaya, which is basically a translation. But Nalanda was a Mahavihara, but the idea of university is born at Nalanda, because Nalanda itself is, first of all, it's a global university, It's in all senses, in modern senses. In fact, today we have many universities in India which should not be called universities, but they are universities.
Yeah, some are deemed to be, some call themselves as universities, but they are not actually in its actual definition and orientation.
Right.
Okay. So Abhay, let's start. So now, before starting this entire conversation, I want to recite a poem from your book, which impacted me and actually made me very sad in a good way. I mean, in a good way because I loved the way you've written the poetry, but I'm going to recite it and it's up to people how they perceive it. But it was a great, I think it's a great tragedy what happened to Nalanda, and we're going to unfold everything about it. So you have written a poem about the raid of Nalanda. Very powerful. The day of massacre at Nalanda. Bakhtiyar and his men play buskashi in my alleys today. Monks are being burnt alive, and those who try to escape are beheaded. Dharmganj, the 9-storied library, has burst into flames. Smoke and ash from burning books have turned the day into night. The sun has disappeared from the sky today, and even my bricks bleed. Sacred chants that once purified Magध have turned into shrieks of a falling humanity. The light of the world is fading today to face the ravages of time alone. Abandoned, scorned, forgotten, or perhaps to be reborn into many Nalandas. And this is from your book, which I feel should be a mandate read for everyone on the subject, because we don't know what we have lost. I think if Nalanda would have survived and there were rulers who would have protected it, in today's time, it would have been tenfold bigger than Oxford and Cambridge, and more scientific developments and more discoveries would have stemmed out from this university. I am so sorry for the sudden interruption. ये हमें करना पड़ता है और हमको इसी प्रकार से इंटरप्ट करना पड़ता है. But I have a request कि guys, अगर आपको थोड़ी भी वैल्यू लग रही है in what we are providing with our podcast, in the kind of content that we are creating, and in the kind of people that we are bringing on our show, please subscribe to our channel. This is the only way in which any podcast on YouTube can grow. It will cost you nothing. आपने सिर्फ सब्सक्राइब करना है. And trust me guys, if you subscribe to this podcast, we'll make sure that we continue delivering you such amazing content, intelligent content. हम एक intelligent podcast create करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. That is why हमारे जितने भी guest होते हैं वो सारे published authors होते हैं जिनका work के there's a backing to their work. कोई भी कुछ ऐसे नहीं बोल रहा. So guys, please subscribe to our channel and continue enjoying and listening to this episode.
Right. So, see, I mean, Nalanda is actually, if you go and see the ruins of Nalanda, I think that's one of the first things everybody should do, to visit the site of Nalanda and see how massive it is, you know. And it's a university, it's a Mahavihara which was built in 5th century AD in its present form, you know, and of course there were additions over centuries. But it was planned as a center of knowledge to push the boundaries of knowledge. In Nalanda, you have the first experiment of a residential university, Mahavihara, where you have the, you know, an architectural plan actually developing there, where you have a courtyard plan, and there's a courtyard for teaching, while around the courtyard जो है उसके चारों तरफ जो है वो कमरे होते हैं, है ना, मंक्स के रहने के लिए. तो उसमें जो है वो रहते हैं, वहीं पे टीचर्स भी वहीं. Nalanda is multi-storied in the sense it's not just one floor, you know. When Xuanzang comes, he's put on the 4th floor, you know. So you have all these details very beautifully written. So Nalanda is designed to push the boundaries of knowledge, in the sense everybody who comes to Nalanda is not studying one subject, but they are studying, there's an interdisciplinary learning, everybody is studying everything. So this is a place where teachers and students, you know, there's not much difference, you know. A monk who becomes learned becomes a teacher, and they are day and night they are pursuing knowledge. So of course, if Nalanda was not destroyed, that's another question. But it was not for the first time that Nalanda was destroyed. In 12th century, there were damages inflicted to Nalanda earlier as well. There is an evidence of you know that Huns attacked Nalanda when it had just been founded, in 5th century AD. But Nalanda was always rebuilt. There were people who could gather strength, gather resources, and rebuild it. But it was not rebuilt after it was attacked and raided and destroyed in 13th century. So that is the difference. So see, it's very easy to blame destruction itself, but what happened? Were we not capable to rebuild it again after 13th century? Why did we have to wait for 800 years to rebuild Nalanda? So that's the question we have to ask ourselves.
It's a very much a possibility that there might have been certain political forces at play, which maybe did not want it to get rebuilt and take a leverage or a precedence over the society. Could be possible because we are aware about the differences in the debates that used to happen between the Vedic sects. I'm just calling them the Vedic sects. The Brahmins can also be under that. And I'm saying this with great reverence. I'm not saying the Brahmins are good or Buddhists are good or bad. No, nothing like that. There's no good and bad that exists. It is just there were debates on the supremacy of each of the philosophies.
Correct.
I think that's what Adi Shankaracharya's aim was, to have debates and
discussion.
And to tell people the superiority of the Vedic ecosystem, right? And there were debates with many Buddhist monks. And so there could be political agendas, I think so, because you have also mentioned somewhere very loosely in the book that at that time, not many kings did, protect that university from getting destroyed or looted or burned. And then it completely, and we'll get into that. We'll get into the downfall of the Buddhism as well as Nalanda, because I think people need to understand. But अबे मैं अब कोई भी अच्छी चीज जो होती है, किसी भी चीज जो लंबी चलती है, जिसकी उसकी नींव होनी चाहिए बहुत स्ट्रांग, उसकी फिलॉसफी होनी चाहिए बहुत स्ट्रांग, उसकी आइडियोलॉजी होनी चाहिए बहुत स्ट्रांग. तो इससे पहले कि हम नुआंसेस में जाएं और डिटेल्स में जाएं कि नालंदा में क्या होता था, क्या सब्जेक्ट थे, कौन से लोग निकले, इसका जो जर्मिनेशन, द सीड इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड ये आया कहां से. और वो समझने के लिए, क्योंकि हिंदुस्तान में लोगों को बुद्धा के भी बारे में कुछ नहीं पता. द ओनली थिंग, and I find it very surprising, the only thing that Indians more or less know about Buddha is that he was a Vishnu avatar.
Right. And that's like a 10th century phenomena, 10th century onward, that notion comes in. But see, let me take you back to 600, 6th century BC or 600 before Common Era. And Buddha, as you know, was born as Gautam Siddharth in Kapilavastu. And when he left the palace of his father, उन्होंने जब अपने पिता का महल छोड़ा, तो सबसे पहले वो राजगृह आए. राजगृह जो है, आप मतलब कि जो सुनने वाले हैं उनके लिए, कि राजगृह जो है वो मगध की पहली राजधानी थी, और पाटलिपुत्र जो है वो दूसरी राजधानी थी मगध की. तो राजगृह और नालंदा बिल्कुल आसपास में है, 10 किलोमीटर की दूरी है बीच में. तो जो राजगृह जो था 6th सेंचुरी बीसी में, वो आज के न्यूयॉर्क और लंदन के जैसा था, जहाँ जितने लोग भी जिसको भी फेम चाहिए था, नेम चाहिए था, या ज्ञान चाहिए था, इनलाइटनमेंट, दे ऑल वर इन राजगृह. वो सब राजगृह ही आ रहे थे. दे वर कमिंग टू राजगृह टू अटेन दैट. तो गौतम सिद्धार्थ भी जब कपिलवस्तु छोड़ा उन्होंने, तो वो राजगृह ही आए, क्योंकि राजगृह उस समय का सबसे महत्वपूर्ण जो है सांस्कृतिक कहिए, विज्ञान के मतलब वैज्ञानिक कहिए या स्पिरिचुअल कहिए, सभी तरह से जो राजगृह था वो वहाँ का सेंटर था, पूरे नॉर्थ इंडिया का कह सकते हैं आप. और साउथ का भी कह सकते हैं, क्योंकि मगध जो है, जो 16 जो महाजनपद थे 6th सेंचुरी BC में, मगध उसमें सबसे ज्यादा जो है प्रोमिनेंट और प्री एमिनेंट महाजनपद था। तो वहाँ बुद्ध तो नहीं थे अभी तक। वो जब गौतम सिद्धार्थ ने कपिल वस्तु छोड़ी तो वो राजगृह आए। और राजगृह में क्यों आए राजगृह? क्योंकि राजगृह में जितने भी बड़े बड़े फिलोसफर्स हैं सब वहीं थे। जैसे कि उनके जो कॉन्टेम्पररी थे, जिनको आज आप महावीर के नाम से जानते हैं,
या
उनका नाम निगंथनाथ पुत्र पुत्र था। निगंथनाथ पुत्र उनको के नाम से जाना जाता है उनको। और वहाँ पे और बड़े बड़े फिलोसफर्स थे, जैसे अजीत केशा काम्बली का अगर आपने नाम सुना होगा, या मक्खली गोसाल का नाम सुना होगा, या संजय बिलाठी पुत्र का नाम सुना होगा। ये सभी लोग राजगृह में थे। और बुद्ध जो है, मतलब गौतम सिद्धार्थ है, वो जब राजगृह आते हैं तो उनकी मुलाकात बहुत लोगों से होती है। सभी सभी की अपनी फिलॉसफी है, सभी के अपने पथ हैं आगे जाने के। अब उनको लगता है कि करें क्या, तो करें क्या, कौन सा सही रास्ता है जिससे ज्ञान की प्राप्ति हो सकती है उनको। तो वो जो है 5 अन्य लोगों से मिलते हैं। जो यही 5 लोग राजगृह, जो उनके बाद में सारनाथ में पहले 5 शिष्य बनेंगे,
हम्म।
ये उनकी मुलाकात राजगृह में ही होती है उनसे। और राजगृह जो है वो, उसके बाद कुछ समय वो बिताते हैं राजगृह में। और उसके बाद फिर जो है वो बोध गया, निरंजना नदी के तट पे, जिसको आज बोध गया के नाम से जाना जाता है, गया से थोड़ी दूरी पर वो वहाँ पहुँच जाते हैं। तो वहाँ पे उनको ज्ञान की प्राप्ति होती है। फिर वो सारनाथ जाते हैं। और सारनाथ में पहला जो है धर्म चक्र प्रवर्तन उपदेश जो उनका होता है, वो होता है, वो यही राजगृह के 5 से जो जो अन्य लोग थे जो भी ज्ञान की खोज में थे, वही उनके शिष्य बनते हैं। और फिर जो बुद्ध है पुनः वापस राजगृह आते हैं, क्योंकि उनका जो है सरमन हो गया है। अब उनको, अगर आपको अपनी फिलोसफी को आगे बढ़ाना है तो आपको जो सबसे प्रमुख राजा है उसको आपको अपने साइड में लाना होगा, है ना। तो वो राजगृह आते हैं। वहाँ पे जो राजा हैं उस समय, उनका नाम है बिम्बिसार। और बिम्बिसार को वो जो है प्रयत्न करते हैं कि वो भी बुद्धिस्ट, वो उनकी फिलॉसफी को स्वीकार करें और उसको जो है राज्य, जो है राज्य का संरक्षण प्राप्त हो।
ये मौर्यन एम्पायर से पहले की बात बता रहे हैं आप?
ये
बिम्बिसार वाज
मौर्य
नॉट अ मौर्यन किंग, राइट?
नहीं नहीं, ये मौर्यन से 300 साल की पहले की
अच्छा,
बात
अच्छा,
है।
अच्छा। तो मतलब
मौर्य
आप ये कह रहे हैं कि बुद्धिस्ट, जब बुद्धा थे इस धरती पे और जब मौर्यन एम्पायर आया फ्रॉम चंद्रगुप्त, देयर इज अ डिफरेंस, देयर इज अ गैप ऑफ 300 इयर्स
बिल्कुल
अप्रोक्सीमेटली।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। मौर्यंस जो है उसके 300 साल बाद आते हैं, थर्ड
आ
सेंचुरी BC में, है ना। तो जो
बिम्बिसार।
ये बिम्बिसार है। और बिम्बिसार जो है बुद्धा को एक वेणु वन देते हैं, मतलब कि बैम्बू गार्डन देते हैं, वेणु वन। और वेणु वन में जो है बुद्ध जो है अपने उपदेश देते हैं। वहाँ पे एक करंडक तालाब है जिसमें वो स्नान करते हैं। वो सब चीजें आज भी है वहाँ पर। तो आपको जरूर जाना चाहिए, ताकि आप वो राजगृह और इनकी नालंदा की जो इतिहास है, स्वर्णिम इतिहास है, उससे उसके जो है अवशेष जो बचे हुए हैं वो आज भी मौजूद हैं। तो वहाँ जो है बेनुवन में जो है इनकी मुलाकात होती है 2 लोगों से। एक का नाम है सारीपुत्र और दूसरे का नाम है मोगल्यायन। ये दोनों नालंदा से हैं। और सारीपुत्र का जन्म नालंदा के आसपास किसी गांव में हुआ है, और मोगल्यायन उनके बचपन के दोस्त हैं। और इनकी इतनी गहरी दोस्ती है, यारी है, कि इन्होंने एक पैक्ट बनाया है दोनों ने मिलकर करके, कि उन जब भी इनलाइटनमेंट या ज्ञान की प्राप्ति करेंगे तो दोनों साथ साथ करेंगे।
हम्म।
तो अब सारीपुत्र जो है वो बुद्ध के वचन सुनते हैं, प्रवचन सुनते हैं, तो उनको बहुत अच्छा महसूस होता है। उनको लगता है यही सही रास्ता है।
और जबकि
और
वो वेदास में एप्ट होते हैं, ये इंपॉर्टेंट
बिल्कुल
है, दे ऑलरेडी वर वेरी वेल वर्स्ड विद द वैदिक
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल,
इकोसिस्टम।
सारीपुत्र जो हैं वो एक खास परिवार से आते हैं। आप किताब अगर पढ़े होंगे
यस।
तो उसमें आपने पढ़ा होगा कि सारीपुत्र जो है, इसलिए,
स्कॉलरली।
हाँ, सारीपुत्र का जो परिवार है वो बहुत ही जो है विशेष परिवार है। वो नालंदा जो राजगृह में जो वाद विवाद की प्रतियोगिता होती है, उनके पिताजी जो है सारीपुत्र के, वो उन्होंने जीता हुआ है। और वो एक्चुअली जो है साउथ इंडिया से हैं, मतलब कि वो एक वो वहाँ नालंदा में उनको नालंदा दिया गया है, लेकिन वो हैं उनके पिताजी पिताजी दक्षिण भारत से। तो सारीपुत्र इसलिए उनका नाम दिया जाता है क्योंकि वो उनके पिताजी जो है उनके माँ के नाम पे उनका नाम रखते हैं सारीपुत्र, क्योंकि उनकी माँ का नाम सारिका है। और पहले उनका नाम जो है तिस्सा था, उपतिस है ना। तो फिर उनका नाम जो है बदल कर करके सारीपुत्र उनके माँ के नाम पर रखा जाता। अब सारीपुत्र जो है वो बुद्ध के वचनों से इतने प्रभावित हैं कि उन्होंने जो है अपना अपने जो गुरु थे संजय बिलाठी पुत्र, उनको जो है वो उनके 500 अन्य शिष्यों को लेकर के वो बुद्ध के साथ आ जाते हैं। अब बुद्ध की जो शिष्यों की संख्या है 5 थी, उससे सीधे वो 505 हो गई। तो बुद्ध बड़े प्रसन्न हैं क्योंकि सारीपुत्र जो है बुद्ध से उम्र में भी बड़े हैं एक्चुअली, और सारीपुत्र उनके शिष्य बनते हैं तो उन्हें बहुत खुशी होती है। और वो अपना सारीपुत्र को अपना प्रथम फर्स्ट मेल डिसाइपल बनाते हैं, और मोगल्यायन जो है उनके सेकेंड मेल डिसाइपल होते हैं उनके, चूंकि वो सारीपुत्र के मित्र हैं और उनकी भी बहुत बहुत वो भी बहुत पहुंचे हुए हैं। अब यहाँ से जो है हम लोग इस घटना के 300 साल बाद जो है हम लोग चलते हैं। सम्राट अशोक जो मौर्य चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य के पौत्र हैं, मतलब पोते हैं, तो जब सम्राट अशोक जो है वो उस समय तक जो मगध की राजधानी है वो राजगृह से शिफ्ट हो चुकी है पाटलिपुत्र, 300 वर्ष बीत चुके हैं। और सम्राट अशोक जो है वो आते हैं वापस नालंदा राजगृह, पुराने जो राजधानी है, और वहाँ पे सारीपुत्र को सम्मान के लिए करने के लिए वो सारीपुत्र के लिए एक स्तूप बनवाते हैं नालंदा में। और जहाँ चूंकि सारीपुत्र का जन्म नालंदा हुआ था, उनका निर्वाण की प्राप्ति भी नालंदा में ही हुई, तो उस स्थल पे एक सारीपुत्र के लिए स्तूप बनाया जाता है छोटा सा। और उसके साथ साथ जो है सम्राट अशोक एक विहार का, बुद्धिस्ट जो विहार है, बौद्ध विहार का भी निर्माण करते हैं जहाँ की अभिधर्म की पढ़ाई हो सके। अभिधर्म जो है बुद्धिस्ट फिलॉसफी का एक संग्रह है, तो उसकी पढ़ाई शुरू होती है वहाँ पे। और जो आज अगर आप नालंदा के खंडहर देखेंगे तो जो सबसे ऊंची जो इमारत देखते हैं, ऊंची बिल्डिंग जो है, वो सारीपुत्र का स्तूप है, जो कि मतलब कि 7 सक्सेसिव फेजेस में, मतलब कि उसको लगभग 700 साल उसमें कंस्ट्रक्शन हुआ है।
700 years, वाओ।
यस। और उसमें जो है वो स्तूप से फिर उसको चैत्य में बदल दिया गया, एक मंदिर की तरह, मतलब बुद्धिस्ट टेम्पल जिसको कहते हैं। तो ये सरीपुत्र का जो स्तूप है या सारीपुत्र का जो स्तूप है, उसी के चारों तरफ, उसी के इर्द गिर्द जो है वो सारे बुद्धिस्ट विहार का निर्माण होता है, क्योंकि वो सबसे उसका सैक्रेड साइट है नालंदा का सारीपुत्र का स्तूप।
सो अशोक के टाइम पे आप ये कह रहे हैं, सो इज इट कि अशोक से 300 साल जैसे गैप हुआ, तब तक एक फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर नहीं बना था नालंदा महाविहारा का, राइट? वहां पर ऐसे लोग आके नहीं पढ़ते थे, देयर वाज नो स्ट्रक्चर। तो इज इट कि अशोक के टाइम पे वो स्टार्ट होना शुरू हुआ?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। लेकिन नालंदा जो है अपने आप में एक बहुत प्राचीन जगह है, क्योंकि बुद्ध भी वहां जाते थे। क्योंकि नालंदा जो है वो एक, नालंदा जो है अगर आप कवर देखेंगे किताब का, तो आप इसमें ना एक सांप देखेंगे,
यस।
और कमल के फूल हैं। तो नालंदा जो है लेजेंड के अनुसार एक सांप है, और जो एक तालाब में रहता है जो कि कमल के फूलों से भरा हुआ है। तो अब नालंदा जो है ना, मगध जो है वो नागों की भूमि रही है, वहां पे सर्पेंट वर्शिप जो है, नाग पूजा होती रही है।
ये नहीं पता था मेरे को, अच्छा।
हाँ। हाँ, तो इसलिए जो है नालंदा एक नाग है ना। और और अगर आप बुद्धिज्म की अर्ली हिस्ट्री देखेंगे तो एक वहाँ मेट म्यूजियम में बहुत बढ़िया एग्जीबिशन हुआ था, उसका नाम है सर्पेंट एंड द ट्री। क्योंकि अर्ली बुद्धिज्म में ना सर्पेंट और ट्री को बहुत महत्व दिया जाता है। तो जो नालंदा जो है ऑल्सो नोन एज नागानंदा, ए प्लेस ब्लेस्ड बाय नागा। तो ये जो बात है वो अगर आप मगध में देखेंगे, राजगृह में भी मनियार मठ है, वहाँ पे मतलब कि मणि नाग की पूजा के लिए ना मठ बनाया हुआ है, और बहुत पुराना है वो भी उसी समय का है। तो काफी वहाँ मगध जो ऐसी धरती रही है जहाँ पे कि नागों की पूजा होती थी, जहाँ पे वृक्षों की पूजा होती थी, और अर्ली बुद्धिज्म जो का आइकॉनिक जो रिप्रेजेंटेशन है वो इनके थ्रू होता था, क्योंकि बुद्धा जो है अर्ली बुद्धिज्म में, मतलब कि फ्रॉम फर्स्ट टू सिक्स सेंचुरी टू फर्स्ट सेंचुरी, मतलब फर्स्ट एडी, 6 सेंचुरी बीसी से 600 साल का जो पीरियड है, उस समय बुद्ध बुद्ध को जो है एक मनुष्य माना जाता है, उनको देवता नहीं माना जाता। तो उसको हम थेरावादा बुद्धिज्म कहते हैं, या हीनयाना बुद्धिज्म के नाम से भी जाना जाता है उसको। तो वो अर्ली बुद्धिज्म है, उसमें बुद्ध जो है एक सिर्फ मनुष्य हैं, एक हमारे और आपके जैसे व्यक्ति हैं। और फर्स्ट सेंचुरी एडी के बाद ना महायाना बुद्धिज्म आ जाता है, जिसमें कि बुद्ध जो है एक भगवान बन जाते हैं और उनकी मूर्ति की पूजा होनी शुरू हो जाती है, लेकिन उसके पहले बुद्ध की मूर्ति की पूजा नहीं होती है।
बट जब उनकी जिस टाइम पे थेरावादा बुद्धिज्म जो है उसमें वो भले ही मनुष्य हैं बट ही इज एनलाइटेंड।
हाँ,
ही इज एनलाइटेंड, ये है।
हाँ, ये बुद्ध है,
हाँ ये
लेकिन
बुद्ध है बट इज अ
बट
ह्यूमन बीइंग।
हाँ, बट ही इज अ ह्यूमन बीइंग, ही इज नॉट अ गॉड। So now, what happens that, in third century BC, taking you back to Nalanda, Ashoka, Samrat Ashok, when he becomes a Buddhist after the Kalinga War, he goes back to Nalanda. He founds a stupa for Sariputra. Now another 300 years pass. वहाँ पे बुद्धिस्ट विहार बन जाता है, वहाँ पे पढ़ाई होती है अभिधर्म की, एंड स्लोली एंड ग्रेजुअली the vihara becomes very famous. But before that also, Nalanda is a sacred place, even not only for Buddha but also for Mahavira, because Mahavira is, his place of nirvana is actually in Nalanda itself, a place called Pavapuri, just I think few kilometers away from Nalanda.
And he was his contemporary. But did
But
they live at more or less the same timeline?
exactly. Not only them, but there are many philosophers. They are contemporaries. They are all greats. Like Makhali Gosal is a great philosopher of Ajivika philosophy. Sanjay Belatiputta, Ajit Kesha Kambali is a very important philosopher of Charvaka philosophy. So they are all contemporaries. They are there at the same.
And of the same geography. They come from the same geography. Oh my
Yes,
God.
they are all in Rajgir at that time. So they are all in the 6th century BC, active in 6th century BC. So you have, in fact, Makhali Gosal and Mahavir, they meet each other at Nalanda. So Nalanda is a sacred place even before them. It's a sacred place because of the worship of the Naga, and when Buddha visits, he visits Nalanda, he stays there, he gives, his sermon. So these places where he gives sermon is a mango grove. वहाँ आम का बागीचा है जहाँ की, और वो बागीचा जो है वो अभी कहा जाता है कि वो नालंदा जो विश्वविद्यालय है, जो महाविहारा है, उसके अंदर ही है, क्योंकि वो मूल गंधा कुटी उसको कहते हैं. दैट इज द प्लेस वेयर, दैट्स अ सेक्रेड प्लेस विच इज विद इन द कैंपस. सो ये सब सारी हिस्टोरिक चीजें हैं. फिर 300 साल तक वहाँ लगातार पढ़ाई होती है. नालंदा का रेप्यूटेशन धीरे 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 एक एज ए सेंटर ऑफ लर्निंग बढ़ता जाता है. एंड फर्स्ट सेंचुरी एडी में वहाँ पे साउथ इंडिया से there comes a great philosopher, and his name is Nagarjuna. And Nagarjuna is, he's the philosopher who has given us Shunyata, who has given us this philosophy of Shunyata and Madhyamaka. Madhyamaka and Shunyata comes from, a text called Pragya Paramita Sutra. And Pragya Paramita Sutra is actually the foundational text of Mahayana Buddhism. Now, in Pragya Paramita Sutra, Nagarjuna, he says that he has retrieved this sutra from the Nagas, and that's why he is known as Nagarjuna, one who is victorious over the Nagas. So, but in reality, it is Nagarjuna who is the writer of these sutras.
And when he says that he has retrieved this knowledge from the Nagas, it is, I'm hoping that it is symbolism.
Right. It's
It is
symbolic
not,
of
it's not, it's symbolism. It's a poetic way of expressing something,
yes.
right?
But what Nagarjuna says that he attributes these texts were given by Bodhisattva Sariputra, sorry, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to Sariputra in Rajgirah at the Gridhkut Parvat, at the Vulture's Peak in Rajgirah.
So even the philosophy of Shunyata of
Right.
Nagarjuna,
Yes,
it is Buddha's philosophy only that
of
got
course,
transmitted, right? It's not
of
something
course.
that
Yes.
was originally discovered and then added in the Buddhist
No,
philosophical
no, no,
ecosystem.
no.
Haan, yeah.
Nagarjuna says that Buddha himself talks about Shunyata in his original philosophy of which is known as philosophy of co-dependent origination. That is Buddha's main philosophy. It's called the philosophy of like everything in this world is is codependently originated in the sense that the things they exist together, like when there's a day there's a night. You cannot have just a day.
Yin yang, in a way.
Right, exactly. So, this philosophy is known as the philosophy of Pratitya Sam Utpad. Pratitya Sam Utpad. And this is the original philosophy of Buddha. And from here, he derives this Sunyata. And there is this famous Heart Sutra or the Hridaya Sutra, which is part of Pragya Paramita Sutra. So Nagarjuna says that these sutras were given by Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to Sariputra at Rajgira, at the Gridhkut Parvat at Rajgira. But Sariputra was alive 600 years ago, not during Nagarjuna's time. So basically, Nagarjuna writes these texts, but to make it look cool, he antedates it 600 years ago, and then he says that he has retrieved these from the Nagas.
But were these? I also read that Shariputra was also given the task of documenting the teachings of Buddha. तो
बिल्कुल.
तो अगर ये टीचिंग नागार्जुना तक भी पहुंची तो वो क्या वैदिक स्टाइल ओरली ट्रांसमिट हुई होंगी या वो शरीरपुत्र ने कहीं ना कहीं लिखा होगा और ये लिखित में अवेलेबल है क्योंकि ये तो डिस्टिंक्शन भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
वैदिक इकोसिस्टम इज कंप्लीटली ओरल एंड दे हैव अ प्रोसेस. इससे आप उसको मीटर टू मीटर ट्रांसमिट कर पाओगे बट ओरली करेंगे. बुद्धिज्म ने कंप्लीट नया वर्टिकल क्रिएट करा था डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का. तो
बिल्कुल.
ये थोड़ा सा मुझे समझना है कि ये ट्रांसमिट कैसे हो रहा था.
तो देखिए ऐसे हुआ क्योंकि सारिपुत्र जो है ना, सारिपुत्र पास्ट अवे बिफोर बुद्धा.
हाँ, yes.
So he got nirvana before Buddha. He was much elder than him. So it was not Sariputra who he is known as Dharma Senapati. So he is responsible for codifying the rules of the monastery. Putting the words of Buddha together. But orally. But for the first time, the Buddhist council, the first Buddhist council is held at Saptaparni caves in Rajgira, just after the death of Buddha. So Buddha dies after Sariputra, and you have the documentation process at the first Buddhist council.
Okay.
Which happens during the reign of King Ajatasattu, who is son of King Bimbisar.
Yeah.
But also a contemporary of Buddha. Ajatasattu is a contemporary of Buddha. And he organizes the first Buddhist council in Rajgira, and there the Tripitakas and all are written there. So Buddhism brings in the writing process.
Yeah. Do you think did this turn out as a master stroke for this philosophy when they brought in the writing process with the Vedic text
Right.
or the Vedic ecosystem never did. So I think it's not a question about कि कौन better था. मुझे
बिल्कुल.
लगता है कि वो writing वाला part लाके चाहे वो knowingly हो चाहे unknowingly हो consciously हो unconsciously हो,
बिल्कुल.
it was a master stroke. What do you think?
Master stroke, and also then it leads to a book culture. Later
Yes.
you will see in Nalanda how the first book, the world's first printed book, is actually a Buddhist text. Paragya Paramita Sutra, which was by Nagarjuna.
So it's not the Bible.
It's not the Bible. The world's first printed book is called Diamond Sutra, which is actually Pragya Paramita Vajra Vichedika. So known as Diamond Sutra, and it was printed around 8th century. Much later in China. So that's the first printed book in the world. You can Google it and you will find the answer. It's not Bible. So, so you have the writing culture coming from there. Then not only writing culture, but also a book culture develops. Then you have the worship of the book happens. So you have these, when you see these wheels when you go to the monasteries in Tibet, or in Ladakh, or in the hilly areas, Himachal. So these turning wheels, they are known as prayer wheels, which you can move, and when you go around the stupa, you can move these wheels. So what is inside those wheels? Why do we move them? So those prayer wheels were invented by monks at Nalanda. You know why? Because when this common people who could not read or write, they also wanted to have the same merit, religious merit, a spiritual merit of reading the books of Pragya Paramita. Then they could just move these prayer wheels inside which words are kept. So that was the magic, formula to take Buddhism to the masses, Mahayana Buddhism to the masses, that you just create the prayer wheel, and they can get the same religious merit of reading the book.
So if the teachings of Nagarjuna gave birth to Mahayana Buddhism, which in turn are the teachings of Buddha only, then why the differentiation between Theravada and this one? What's the
Mahayana.
difference then? क्योंकि ये तो एक ही source से आ रहे हैं.
Right. So there, everybody has same source of Buddha, but there are different interpretations, of the same text. So in Mahayana Buddhism, there's a concept of bodhisattva, which is not there in Theravada Buddhism, and also the worship of Buddha as a god in Mahayana Buddhism. So what is bodhisattva? Who are bodhisattvas? Bodhisattvas are those beings who are capable of enlightenment, to capable of Buddhahood, but they withhold their Buddhahood to help others reach that stage. So a new concept came that you don't have to become a Buddha yourself. You can help others to become to reach that stage, and it is equally good. It is so the barrier was lowered, because I think to become a Buddha was very difficult.
Yeah, approachability. You need some level of approachability. Otherwise,
so that more, because Buddhism was very austere in Theravada Buddhism, and it did not have any any colorful things.
Yeah.
So here the Buddha started being worshipped. You had rituals. Then you can also lower the barrier of achieving enlightenment. So you could become a bodhisattva, not a Buddha.
but this makes sense, na? Because and do you think that this is where the influence of the Vedic rituals merge with the Buddhism as well?
Of course. So see, Buddhism and Vedic, it's known as Vedic Brahmanism. So both are competing with each other, because Buddhism is sort of a rebellion against Vedic Brahmanism.
Is it a fact, Abhay? Is it a fact? मतलब ये मैंने भी सुना है, but मैं सही में, क्योंकि I've also read कि even Buddha had so many gurus before him. उसने हर school of thought, and I'm sure उसने Veda पढ़ा ही होगा ना. And it's not as if he read the Vedas and he's like pathetic. I'm sure that didn't happen, because a man of his capabilities, he wouldn't denounce it. And I also sometimes think कि Buddha will not say कि I am enlightenment, let's have a rebellion against the Vedic ecosystem. So I
Not
want to
saying that,
clarify
you
that.
know, it is being perceived as that because, Buddha does not, Buddhism, there is no God in Buddhism actually,
Yeah.
So it's silent on God. It neither confirms it nor denies it because he says that if the world is on fire, you first have to quench the fire, rather than finding that who has lit the fire, first you have to quench it, and then it becomes, so he says that the fire is suffering, so world is suffering, and first let us get end of the suffering, so and Buddhism also bring scientific inquiry, because pratitya samutpad is also, if you see the four noble truths of Buddhism, it is based on the philosophy of pratitya samutpad, because in what does pratitya samutpad says that everything there is a cause, so he says that there is suffering in this world, the first noble truth, it all comes from there.
Dukkham.
Dukkha. And the second one, that there's a cause of suffering, there's a karan, dukkha ka karan hai. And the third one comes is that the karan kya hai? So karan is desire, trishna, or desire. So, or fourth noble truth is that there is a way out, of suffering. Then after 500 years after the arrival of Nagarjuna to Nalanda, comes another two great philosophers from northwest of India, and they are known as Asanga and Vasubandhu. They bring in a new philosophy of Yogachara.
I wanted to know what that is. Yeah.
Yes. So Yogachara is, it's beliefs in consciousness, in the sense that everything we know is out of this consciousness.
Chetna. Yeah.
Yogachara. So here I have given a brief detail of each one of these philosophies.
Yes.
That what is in Nalanda's contributions, and Yogachara. If you see here, it says that Yogachara is a Mahayana tradition of Buddhist philosophy. It's the same tradition as of Nagarjuna, Shunyata, but it's different. That studies consciousness, cognition, and perception through meditation, as well as philosophical reasoning. So इसमें दो चीज़ों का यूज होता है. It's the study of consciousness basically, but consciousness through meditation, ध्यान, and philosophical reasoning, hetu vidya. Yogachara literally means practitioner of yoga or yog, also known as chitta mantra, mind only, Vijnanavada, the doctrine of consciousness, and Vignapati Bada, the doctrine of ideas or percepts. It is formed one of the two most influential Buddhist schools of thought at Nalanda Mahavihara, along with Madhyamaka or Sunyata. It is primarily meant to help in the practice of yoga and meditation. And Asanga and Vasubandhu, both 4th to 5th century from Gandhar, along with Maitreya Natha, who is considered like a bodhisattva, Maitreya Natha, are considered the founders of this school. The doctrines of Yogachara school crystallized at Nalanda, traveled with its scholar to other lands, forming various schools. For example, it has many schools in China actually, still active. And these principles influenced the formation of Neo-Confucianism in academics of classical learning of China, and was subsequently practiced in Japan and Korea. And it also formed the two major schools of Buddhism in Tibet actually, and which is followed by the 14th Dalai Lama himself, and is the crux of Tibetan Buddhism, and its subsects like Karmapa and Habrungpa travel to eastern Tibet, Nepal, Sikkim, and further to Bhutan. So this is something which is, Yogachara. But after Yogachara, Nalanda becomes a center of of Vajrayana Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism.
Yeah, explain that as well, because I'm still confused. How did Tantra get into this thing? And we have Vajrayana, which is Tantric Buddhism. I couldn't understand this thing.
So the continuous practice of this Mahayana Buddhism at Nalanda gave birth to Tantrayana Buddhism, and what's Tantrayana or what we know as Vajrayana. So what is Tantrayana actually? So Vajrayana, also known as Mantrayana or Tantrayana, is a school of thought of Mahayana that evolved at Nalanda Mahavihara. And has its roots in the Yogachara philosophy practiced at Nalanda. It symbolizes the union of male and female, emphasizing the practice of indivisibility of wisdom and compassion. So, इनका कहना है कि wisdom और compassion दोनों एक ही हैं. They are the two sides of the same coin. Wisdom and compassion. मतलब kindness, बुद्धि और जो काइंडनेस है,
करुणा.
करुणा. तो बुद्धि एक साइड और करुणा एक साइड, दोनों एक ही हैं एक्चुअली. इस प्रैक्टिस इज कैरेक्टराइज्ड बाय मंत्र धारणी, लाइक chanting, the making of mandalas and mudras, ritual gestures, all of which were extensively used. While Tantrayana lost followers in India, especially in eastern India, after the fall of Nalanda and other Mahaviharas, it gained popularity in Tibet, Mongolia, and East Asia. Acharya Padmasambhava or Guru Rinpoche carried the Tantric Buddhist principles developed at Nalanda to Tibet. And assimilating the same with the local Phon religion, Acharya Padmasambhava made Buddhism acceptable to wider sections of society in Tibet, which accepted it as its state religion. He is also credited with having established the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, from which other schools of Tibetan Buddhism originate. So that is Vajrayana or Tantrayana.
But Abhay, tell me, so you have the foundation of Mahayana Buddhism, okay?
Right.
Now then you have the establishment of Tantrayana, wherein Tantra, because Tantra, I'm hoping that existed as an independent arm, even predating Buddhism.
Correct.
Right. So you took up the principles and the formulas and the structure of Tantra Vidya, which is a very different vertical, even from the other religious bells. And then you combine it with the principles of Buddhism. So you're saying they use the principles of Tantra Vidya, which predates Buddhism.
True.
So, क्योंकि जो Tantra Vidya है, which predates Buddhism, it clearly has a set of deities, जो आपके Vedic deities हैं. तो मैं ये जानना चाहता हूं, जब बुद्धिज्म में ये तंत्र विद्या का स्ट्रक्चर कंबाइन हुआ, तो क्या उसके साथ हिंदू और वैदिक डीटीज भी आए, और वो आए तो व्हाट इज देयर प्लेस इन द इकोसिस्टम ऑफ बुद्धा? ये हुआ कैसे असिमिलेशन? ये तो अगर माइंड पूछा जाए तो एकदम विपरीत चीजें हैं. एक तरफ आप बोल रहे हैं कि भगवान नहीं है, एक तरफ आप तंत्रा के प्रिंसिपल्स को इंटीग्रेट कर रहे हैं जो डीटीज के अराउंड ही रिवॉल्व करते हैं. वो ये सिंथेसिस कैसे हुआ?
तो जो जैसे कि ये जो सिंथेसिस है ना, इट वाज बिकॉज ऑफ द ग्रेजुअल इम्पैक्ट ऑफ हिंदुइज्म ऑन बुद्धिज्म. तो जैसे देखिए, पहले जो फर्स्ट इम्पैक्ट होता है, बुद्धिज्म starts treating Buddha as a god. So that itself, Mahayana Buddhism itself is, a kind of fusion of Hinduism and Buddhism. आप देख सकते हैं. फिर तो ऑस्टियर बुद्धिज्म जो था, जो ओरिजिनल बुद्धिज्म है, सिर्फ थेरावादा है, व्हाट बुद्धा सेड, उसके बाद से जो ग्रेजुअली जो है उस पे वैदिक इम्पैक्ट होता रहा है. So that therefore, and then in turn, Buddhism is also influencing Hinduism. It's not one-sided impact, उसके बाद देखिए, अगर आप हिंदू डेटीज देखेंगे, जितने डेटीज, अगर आप नेशनल म्यूजियम आप कभी गए हैं, if you go to National Museum,
I don't think so. No, I have not.
So अगर आप नेशनल म्यूजियम में जाएंगे ना, तो जो पहली जो डेटीज की स्टैचूज बनती है, मतलब कि पत्थर के जो पहला कमरा है, द फर्स्ट एवर कमरा जो है ना, उसमें सारे बुद्धिस्ट डेटीज हैं, बिकॉज दे आर ओल्डर देन आवर हिंदू डेटीज। उनकी जो स्टैचूज है ना, वो पहले बनी है। उसके उसके बाद जो है आपको फिर सारे मिलेंगे, विष्णु और गणेश और दूसरे कमरे में। So there is Buddhism has also influenced Hinduism, and the first influence is that the statue building. You won't find any statue which is older than the first century AD. आपको कोई भी जो है गणेश की मूर्ति या शिव की मूर्ति नहीं मिलेगी जो कि पहले की है।
सिर्फ लिंग होगा, सिर्फ लिंगास मूर्ति के नाम पे।
लिंगास होंगे, हाँ। लिंगास तो मेसोपोटाम जो सॉरी इसमें इंडस वैली वाले में भी मिलते हैं, जो आप देखेंगे हड़प्पा का जो कमरा है उसमें भी है। बट उसको शिव नहीं कहा जाता है ना। दे आर फैलेसेस,
तो दे आर सिंबल,
लाइक
दे आर
दे आर
सिंबॉलिक,
सिंबल, दे आर
दे
सिंबल।
आर नॉट। तो आप ये कह रहे हैं, जस्ट टू रैप माई हेड अराउंड दिस लॉजिक, if I am looking at the imagery of
करेक्ट।
माँ दुर्गा, माँ सरस्वती, माँ काली, लॉर्ड विष्णु, शिवा, ब्रह्मा, गणेश जी,
हाँ हाँ।
ये जो आज मैं इनकी इमेजेस देख रहा हूं, दे वर इंस्पायर्ड बाय बुद्धिस्ट।
The Buddhist iconography and this, building of the Buddhist statues. So Buddha's statues you will find are the oldest, in the जहाँ पे भी आपको मिलेंगे। अगर आप अभी नेशनल म्यूजियम में जो कलेक्शन है हमारा, उसमें the first room, which is the most ancient room, Kushana period. All these start happening in the Kushana period. कुषाण पीरियड का जो स्टैचूज हैं, उसमें पहले आपको बुद्ध के स्टैचूज मिलेंगे, उसके बाद फिर जो है आपको हिंदू डेटीज के स्टैचूज मिलेंगे। सो इट ऑल हैपेंस इन द सेकंड सेंचुरी ऑनवर्ड्स।
So it's very much a possibility that some of the Indian deities that we know were original Buddhist deities, Buddhist deities as well, could have been possible.
Could have been possible, yes. Not Buddhist deities, but see, उनका कॉन्सेप्ट तो पुराना है। I mean, like we have the major Vedic deities are Indra, Indra is the major।
ऋग Vedic deities, yeah.
हाँ, सो उसमें इंद्र है, उसमें अग्नि
अग्नि
है।
है, वायु है।
हाँ, बट आपको इंद्र की कहीं स्टैचू नहीं
नहीं
मिलेगी।
मिलेंगे।
हाँ, वो फिर विष्णु इज ए माइनर डेटी एक्चुअली इन
ऋग
वैदिक
वेदा।
Veda. So he's one of the deities, one of the many deities. So वेदा में कहीं शिव नहीं है, वेदा में रुद्र है। So you will find Rudra there. Brahma is not there in Veda. So then you have these Puranic deities, Puranas फिर लिखे जाते हैं, फिर पुराना से आते हैं। Therefore Puranas are considered to be written much later, and उनका Buddha is 6th century BC, Puranas are like 5th century AD, so या मतलब कि 1st to 5th कह सकते हैं, 1st to 5th century AD. So you can see that Buddhism has also influenced Hinduism. It's not the one-way street, and then हम लोग थे वहाँ पर कि what is the difference between Mahayana Buddhism and Tantriana. So the continuous practice of Mahayana Buddhism, जो कि Yogachara philosophy introduce होती है 5th century में. So Yogachara is study of consciousness, through meditation, through Hetu Vidya, reasoning. So that leads to the desire of having faster enlightenment, and that's why the Vajrayana, like a Vajra of Indra, Vajra की तरह तुरंत इतना fast हो जाए, lightning की तरह. So that's how comes the concept of Vajrayana, and जिसमें कि male और female जो है, they represent two different, male represents wisdom and female represents compassion. So this is a union of male and female. The philosophy of Tantra comes in. Mandalas come in, the mandalas we make symbolic. Mantras come in, So all these come in for the quest of getting faster enlightenment.
And all these verticals and confluences and synthesis got developed in Nalanda, whilst
Nalanda.
they were all
Right.
under one roof.
Proof. Today the world's first largest Buddhist monument, do you know where is it located?
Nepal? I don't know.
No, it's in Borobudur. It's in Indonesia. And Borobudur actually is a three-dimensional tantric mandala.
Of Tantric Mandala.
Mandala, yes. And that mandala gets developed at Nalanda, the design of that mandala. You have, आप जो अभी, do you do yoga today? Yoga.
Hatha Yoga, yes, I do.
Hatha Yoga. So, what is the oldest text of Hatha Yoga?
I've read it, but आप बताइए, मुझे तो पता है. I was surprised. मैंने अंडरलाइन करा हुआ है, मैंने लिखा भी हुआ है.
So if you read Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, there is only one sutra there, only one sutra, which is in the second part, number 46, which mention about asana. And there is no mention of any of the asanas we do today. Where do they come from? They all come from the Siddhas of Nalanda, you know. So the Siddhas or the Tantric Buddhists who were trying those asanas to preserve energy, called preserving Bindu. And that's the oldest text of Hatha Yoga dates back to the Nalanda, to the Siddhas. I mean, Tantric Buddhists are known as Siddhas, you know.
And Siddhas basically mean who have mastered a particular thing.
Yes,
We are not. Are we going into the metaphysical realm? Why when we say Siddha, or it is कि मैंने एक subject को master कर लिया?
No, they are known as Siddhas. They are like the masters of Tantric Buddhism. And there are 84 of them, you know. So, some of the names, you know, Naropa and all, they are, or like Sarhapa. So,
Does that
Sarhapa
mean that because आपने book में ये भी mention करा है कि though the first reference of Hatha Yoga is in the Buddhic Tantric texts that got developed in Nalanda, but you've also mentioned that it predates to Matsyendra Nath and the Nath Sampradaya.
Of course. Matsyendra Nath only comes in much later, actually. Matsyendra Nath and, Gorakhnath, they come much later. They come in, they are the links between actually the, Goraksha movement, from where the Gorakh is called Gorakh movement or Goraksha movement. It comes from, they are a sect of Nalanda's Tantric Buddhism. And they are worshipped as Buddhists, Buddhists in, like Guru Matsyendra Nath is worshipped as a Buddhist in Nepal, actually, in the Nepal Valley.
The Gorkha community.
The Gorkha community. So, but they also become, a link between Buddhism and Hinduism. And Nath, they also become the Nath Parampara in Hinduism,
So there is a possibility that Hatha Yoga originated in the Buddhist pantheon.
Right.
Oh my God.
The Goraksha movement, 11th to 12th century in Bihar, Bengal and Orissa, was initially a branch of Tantric Buddhism, which later seceded from Buddhism and gave a Shaivite turn to the Natha cult. The Tibetan text Pag Sam Jon Zang, written by Sumpa Khanpo, helped in converting a large section of Buddhists to the Shaba cult. The Nath cult turned into Tantric Shaivism, appropriating aspects of both Vajrayana and Shaivism. Luipa, or Matsyendra Nath, 9th to 10th century, is considered as the founder of Nath cult. He belonged to the Siddha sect of Yogini Kula of Vajrayana and is still worshipped as Avalokiteshvara in Nepal and as Shiva in India. So, Matsyendra Nath जो है ना, उनको शिव की तरह पूजा जाता है भारत में, but Nepal में he is worshipped as a bodhisattva. So he's the link, and there are so many links I have written about, how Buddhism then, after it became Tantric Buddhism, it became indistinguishable from Hinduism.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons of its decline.
I want to understand one more thing. अब नाउ दैट नालंदा महाविहारा में लोग थे, ये डिबेट्स हो रहे हैं, ये फिलॉसफीज क्रिएट हो रही हैं, मुझे ये बताइए, एक पहला सवाल, क्या नालंदा में सिर्फ बुद्धिस्ट फिलॉसफीज पे ही डिस्कशंस होते थे, या वहां पर और भी वर्टिकल्स या सब्जेक्ट्स के लोग आके रिसर्च करते थे? एंड सेकंड, जापान, तिब्बत, चाइना, इंडोनेशिया, म्यांमार, इन लोगों, इन स्पेसिफिकली चाइना, यहां से लोग कैसे खिंचे हुए आ गए? इनको कैसे पता चला? वाई वर दे मेकिंग देयर ट्रेवल्स टू इंडिया, टू नालंदा, टू नो वॉट, टू लर्न वॉट अट्रैक्टेड देम? ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट सवाल है। इतनी ज्यादा कैसे इनकी पहुंच हो गई, इतनी ज्यादा कैसे चीजें फैल गई उस टाइम पे, जब आपको ट्रैवल करने में ही सदियां लग रही हैं? What attracted these Chinese pilgrimages and students to come and stay in Nalanda for years and years and years and then get impacted? तो उस impact पे आएंगे। पहले ये बताइए, नालंदा में क्या क्या सब्जेक्ट्स होते थे? क्या सिर्फ बुद्धिज्म पे बातें होती थी? एंड देन विल कम टू कि इन्होंने ग्लोबली कैसे फैलाया इस चीज को।
हम्म। तो इसमें देखिए, नालंदा जो था ना, अपने समय का सूर्य था, है ना। तो वहाँ उसकी किरणें जो है वो वहाँ शांगान, जो चाइनीज कैपिटल थी उस समय, टांग डायनेस्टी में, वहाँ तक पहुंची थी। वहाँ से भी दूर सभी लोग नालंदा के बारे में जानते थे, क्योंकि वो नालंदा अपने समय का सूर्य था। उसकी किरणें बहुत जो है वो प्रभावशाली थी, बहुत जो है तेज थी। तो कहा जाता है कि जो xuanzang वहां आए थे नालंदा में, तो वो योगाचारा फिलोसफी पढ़ने के लिए आए थे। जो योगाचारा फिलोसफी के बारे में मैंने आपको बताया,
कॉन्शियसनेस, या
कॉन्शियसनेस की जो कॉन्शियसनेस है, जिसको थ्रू मेडिटेशन, ध्यान और हेतु विद्या के साथ। तो उन्होंने जो डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया है कि नालंदा में पढ़ाते क्या थे, तो वो कहते हैं कि द सब्जेक्ट्स taught at महाविहारा covered a wide range of topics drawn from the different fields of learning. As xuanzang notes, all study the great vehicle, मतलब Mahayana, and the 18 sects, and not only so, but even ordinary works such as Vedas and other books. The Hetu Vidya, the Sabda Vidya, and the Chikitsa Vidya, and the works of magic, Atharvaved, the Sankhya. Besides these, they thoroughly investigate the miscellaneous works. Xuanzang himself came to Nalanda to study Yogachara philosophy. He also studied other subjects like Nyaya, Hetu Vidya, Sabda Vidya, and the Brahmins, which covered wide areas of philology, law, philosophy, astronomy, and the Sanskrit grammar of Panini. So,
why does he mention Vedas as ordinary?
because they think that they have these they are much more developed philosophies than what we have in Vedas. This is the description by Xuanzang, and he was a Buddhist, so probably he found Vedas ordinary.
Can you, हाँ मतलब that's very strange, क्योंकि this is exactly what I highlighted, कि all study the great vehicle and the 18 sects, and not only so but even ordinary works such as Vedas and other books. क्योंकि हमारे आज के टाइम पे अभय, वेदास आर कंसिडर्ड टू बी द सोर्स एंड द क्रेडल ऑफ द इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन, so much so that there is not even an utterance or reverence or reference of Buddhism anywhere.
Exactly.
Anywhere. It overshadows, it completely overshadows. It's like Amitabh Bachchan refusing to resign from acting. कि I am the greatest of all time, and people are not even looking at Rajkumar Rao, people are not even looking at Manoj Bajpayee, knowing that they are also the masters of their craft and they bring something new. And the greatest loss अब है जिसमें मैं बात करना चाहता हूं, I now see Japan, I now see China as nations. They are conquering the world in all the domains. They are Buddhist nations. जो हमने हकाल दिया, और मैं जानबूझ के वर्ड हकाल यूज कर रहा हूं, जो हमने एकदम डिनाउंस कर दिया, जो हमने अब्यूज करके छोड़ दिया, वो इन लोगों ने अडॉप्ट करा, अडेप्ट करा, एसिमिलेट करा, वर्शिप करा, चेरिश करा। और आज जापान ने अगर पूरी दुनिया में कल्चरली अगर पकड़ा हुआ है पूरी दुनिया को, देयर बेसिस इज बुद्धिज्म।
करेक्ट।
तो इस पे मैं अब थोड़ा जानना चाहता हूं कि एक तो ग्रेट लॉस है, एंड हाउ डिड दिस थिंग स्प्रेड बिकॉज ऑफ नालंदा इन कंट्रीज लाइक चाइना एंड जापान। लेट्स फर्स्ट स्टार्ट विद चाइना, द इंपैक्ट ऑफ नालंदा एंड इट्स एजुकेशन ऑन चाइनीज सिविलाइजेशन।
राइट। सो मैंने जो है, देखिए, इस किताब का नाम इसलिए मैंने जो है रखा है नालंदा, हाउ इट चेंज द वर्ल्ड। because our focus should be on knowing what were the contributions of Nalanda.
एब्सोल्युटली ना, हम तो ठीक है, पर
Right.
करा क्या इसने? या
तो इसमें जैसे कि मैं जो है अपने किताब में लिखता हूँ कि while the edifices of Nalanda were largely reduced to mounds and the great monastery ceased to function in the early 14th century, its legacy in the development of science, mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, logic, religion, language, literature, art, and architecture continues even today. The works, chronicles, and records left by generation of scholars provide a rich testimony to this. So, इसमें जो है कहते हैं कि Nalanda Mahavihara distinguishes itself as the only Mahavihara that has significantly contributed to all attributes of institution building, artistic traditions, architecture, site planning, and developments in philosophy, and the systems of discourse and world religion, that is Buddhism, equally. The university campus layout, executed through combination of chaityas and viharas, evident in the excavated remains, is a turning point in the development of pedagogical infrastructure of ancient and early medieval times. Witness to developments in systems of education, disciplines of philosophy and logic, and doctrines of Madhyamaka and Yogachara that continues to influence Asia even today. No other educational establishment whose inception dates back to 3rd century BCE continues to guide scholasticism even after ceasing to function for 8 centuries. So ये जो है एक summary है, मैंने जो है this is actually a quote, you know. It's not I am saying, it's a quote from the
या
book. And here, you know, I go on to give examples of, like, for example, the evolution of the Vihara architecture and how Nalanda plays a pioneering role, how the quads and courts of Oxford and Cambridge, you know, they draw their architectural plan from Nalanda.
इसमें अबे एक so I have what I have done now. I have mentioned certain sectors in which Nalanda impacted the world. So I want to start with the first thing. What I found very interesting, and I think people don't know that, and they should know that. You've written in the book, and which is also taken from quotes by various other people, including Dalrymple and other people. The modern day European university ecosystem that we see today was nothing but derived from the concepts of Islamic institutions called madrasas.
Right.
The madrasas in turn have taken complete architecture and organization and everything from the Buddhist Mahaviharas and the Viharas.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
तो ये एक कनेक्शन नहीं पता लोगों को, तो पहले तो इसके बारे में बात करिए, that how the modern university ecosystem comes from us.
So I'll tell you, I was in Uzbekistan 2 weeks ago, and I went to see the Madrasa of Ulugh Beg. You know, he was one of the rulers, a very enlightened ruler actually of Uzbekistan, now Uzbekistan, earlier, you know, Central Asia. So his madrasa, before I entered the madrasa, I was sure that madrasa would have the same architectural plan as Nalanda. So, and when I entered, it was completely confirmed that madrasa has a courtyard plan and there are rooms around it. So, rooms for staying of the students, you know, and courtyard would act as a place to study, to discuss, to listen to the teachers, lectures, etc. So this architectural plan, you know, evolves at Nalanda. You have, if you visit Nalanda, you will see that how these, you know, how each one of the viharas at Nalanda in the Mahavihara complex has the same, almost the same, you know, size of the courtyard, rectangular courtyard. It's almost standard, same size, you know. And there are right now 14 of them are like, you know, you can still see the 14 of them. So, so that's truly amazing, that how this architectural plan travels from Nalanda to the rest of Asia, because, you know, the new Biharas, for example, Navabahar, you know, Dalrymple writes, William Dalrymple writes that indeed the first ever recorded madrasa was built just a few days'
Yeah.
journey from Naubahar, a Buddhist monastery near the ancient city of Balkh in Afghanistan, at Bost, in the unlikely location of Laskar Gah in the western Afghanistan. And how these, according to Bakewith, Christopher Bakewith, the European universitas, which were founded in Bologna in 11th century, Paris and Oxford in 12th century, around the same time were actually incorporated guilds of scholars which could award degrees and were completely different from the modern concept of a college or university. But these, how the universitas of Europe, they borrow the architectural plan of Buddhist Bihars from which from madrasas, and madrasas which borrow the architectural plan from the Buddhist Viharas, and how Nalanda inspires the building of Buddhist Viharas.
So we can say that Nalanda was a blueprint for Cambridge and Oxford in a way.
Right. So it is still there. You can still go and see the quads and courts of, Oxford and Cambridge, which are basically the courtyards, between the two educational institutions.
This is just I mean, what a great loss. Again, I'll say, Abhay, what a great loss for us. What a great loss. We lost something that became the blueprint for the modern education and the scientific inquiry ecosystem. Oh my God. This is like, मेरे को नींद नहीं आएगी आज. This is so, people should know. I mean, they
Right.
should know this.
Right. So see, it says that, the evolution of Nalanda from a vihara founded by Emperor Ashoka in 3rd century BC into a Mahavihara with a well laid out plan with multiple monasteries, developed infrastructure, large endowments, its own walled residential campus, multiple rectangular monasteries, international students, where a variety of disciplines, including secular disciplines, were taught by the best scholars of their time, is how the idea of a university evolved in its true sense over centuries and spread to Central Asia, Europe, and the rest of the world.
And there is one more interesting thing, Abhay, that I was like, this is so brilliant. You have mentioned how admissions used to happen in Nalanda.
Right.
They used to stop at the gate.
So there's
Please
a whole
explain
admission
that.
process, at the university, and that admission process says that Nalanda was famous for its specialization of the art of disputation and public speaking. Swen Sang writes, foreign monks came to the establishment to put an end to their doubts and then became celebrities. India and Indian and foreign monks from distant places like China, Korea, Tibet, and Bakhtiyar, Central Asia, came to India to study at Nalanda and to copy valuable Buddhist manuscripts. 56 Chinese and Korean monks visited India during the span of 40 years between the visits of Swen Sang and Itzing. Many of them visited Nalanda. As noted by Swen Sang, those who stole the name of Nalanda were all treated with respect wherever they went. Even there was this common to steal the name of Nalanda, And he says that the Dwarapala Pandit, scholar at the gate, engaged in debates with the monks who wanted to study at Nalanda Mahavihara. A large number of them were turned back. The keeper of the gate poses some difficult questions many are unable to answer and retire. Swen Sang writes. He adds, of those from abroad who wish to enter the schools of discussion, the majority, bitten by the difficulties of the problems, withdrew, and those who were deeply versed in old and modern learning were admitted. Only 2 or 3 out of 10 succeeded.
And a
So
lot
he
of
also,
foreigners were just chucked out because they couldn't win the debate.
exactly. So, and he also gives us a careful, detail about what was the percentage. It's only 20 to 30%. Only 2 out of 3 out of 10 are able to get through the institution.
This is incredible. And Abhay, not a lot of people, again, a lot of impact I'm gonna say that it had on the world. Let's talk about Aryabhata. People
Right.
don't know that he was a product of Nalanda. He was a student of Nalanda, and he is the one who's credited with the first explaining that it is the earth that revolves around the sun. And that
Right.
was roughly 1,000 years before Galileo and the others. So could you talk about some of these famous,
So,
students?
so I've given an account of
Yeah.
33 luminaries of Nalanda. Aryabhat is one of them. See, Nalanda did not only have Aryabhat, but also many other great luminaries. Who were engaged uh, in in secular disciplines. People would say that Nalanda was a Mahavihara and it was a Buddhist institution. But as you see Swen Sang describing that everything, even Vedas is taught there, even astronomy is taught there, even medicine is taught there. So it's not like a strictly like a religious institution. And you have people, all kind of people can join Nalanda, including the one of the Gupta emperors who relinquished uh, who abdicated and joined Nalanda as a student. So Aryabhat was alive, in the 5th century, 6th century, 476 to 550 CE, and was, thought to have lived in Patliputra, in Patna, modern Patna, and studied and taught at Nalanda. His contributions in the fields of mathematics and astronomy are immense. Considered the father of Indian mathematics, he was the most prominent mathematician at Nalanda Mahavihara in the 6th century CE. The author of his seminal book Aryabhata, he was the first mathematician to use zero as a digit, which simplified mathematical computations and gave birth to mathematical concepts which later became known as algebra and calculus. His innovative work in extracting square and cubic roots and applications of trigonometric functions to spherical geometry is noteworthy. He was also the first to observe that the earth revolves around its own axis and attributes the sources of moonlight to reflected sunlight. His extensive calculations and observations enabled him to calculate the value of pi to the fourth decimal point. So, Aryabhat is a foundational mathematician. He's known as the father of Indian mathematics. And it is actually on the works of Aryabhat, the foundation of Aryabhat, that we have another great Indian mathematician, Brahmagupta, who builds on works of Aryabhat and writes his own book called Brahmasphut Siddhanta. And that where he gives us, how to use zero with other numbers. So when we today say 1 multiplied by 0 is equal to 0, is thanks to Brahmagupta. So, and then, the works of Aryabhat and Brahmagupta later get translated into Arabic in Baghdad, at the House of Wisdom, Beit al Hikmah, and that's how algebra is born. His translation is the book of translation, Al-Jabr. It comes from algebra, and Al-Khwarizmi, who is from Central Asia, he translates the works of Aryabhat and from poetry to prose, and with his own interpretations, and that's how you get the word algorithm, which comes from Al-Khwarizmi. So all these, I mean, these are the matters of legends and matters of history actually. How Shunya, gets born at Nalanda, where it was only possible at Nalanda because the philosophy of Shunyata was informing the mathematics of Shunya.
Abhay, now I want to conclude this entire conversation with a very important question. What led to the complete annihilation of Nalanda and Buddhism in India? And did Bakhtiyar Khilji had a very important role to play in the annihilation and the destruction of this university?
Well, so see, this is a fact that India in the 12th century was an India which was very different from what it was during the Mauryan period or even the Gupta period, during the Mauryan dynasty or the Gupta dynasty. So largely, India was unified from the time of Buddha, you can see. When the Mauryans came, there was the Mauryan Empire and India was unified. When the Gupta dynasty came, India was unified. When the Kushanas came, North India was unified under Kushanas. Then after the Guptas, you have the Harsa, Harsavardhana. Harshavardhan has also played an important role in unifying India. Then you have the gradual, fragmentation of the political power. So you have the Palas. So Palas are dominant dynasty in the east of India, but they are not a dominant dynasty in the south and west of India. So west that time becomes Chalukyas and the Chauhans, and the south becomes the Rashtrakutas, dominated by them. So there is this tripartite struggle which is happening among them. They are weakening each other by fighting each other, and by 10th century, this tripartite struggle already begins in the Indian subcontinent, and you have the weakening of the political, strategic, military, and economic power, of the Indians. And by 12th century, India becomes so weak politically and militarily that the first battle of Panipat, of Tarai, sorry, first battle of Tarai is won by Prithviraj Chauhan against Muhammad of Ghor. But the second battle of Tarai is lost by Prithviraj Chauhan. And Muhammad of Ghor he sends three of his generals, to conquer India, and so the two actually are, one is known as one is one of them out of the three is Bakhtiyar Khilji, who goes to the east of India. But you also have the other general founding, Qutbuddin Aibak is another general who founds the Delhi Sultanate. So you have Qutbuddin Aibak and you have Bakhtiyar Khilji. Now India is politically weak. It's basically the Turks who become dominant, and they march. For example, the Persian historian Minhaj Sirazi, who is from Delhi actually, he writes in his book Tabaqat-e Nasiri. And what is Tabaqat-e Nasiri? It's a biography of all the Delhi sultans, and their generals. So in which he writes that the invasion of Odantpuri, which is very close to Nalanda, is just 10 kilometers from Nalanda. Odantpuri, today known as Bihar Sharif. And he says that Odantpuri was invaded by Bakhtiyar Khilji in 1193. And it was the two brothers, Samsuddin and Nizamuddin, who served Bakhtiyar Khilji and participated in the plunder of Odantpuri and Vikramsila, who recounted this to him at Lakhnauti, the capital of Gauda, Kingdom of Bengal. And Minhaj writes, about Khilji's attack of Udantpuri. It's very clearly written. He went to the gate of the fort of Bihar or Udantpur with only 200 horses and began the war by taking the enemy unawares. Muhammad Bakhtiyar, with great vigor and audacity, rushed in at the gates of the fort and gained possession of the palace. Great plunder fell into the hands of the victors. Most of the inhabitants of the place were Brahmins with shaven heads. They were put to death. Large number of books were found there, and when the Muhammadans saw them, they called for some person to explain their contents. But all the men had been killed. It was discovered that the whole fort and the city was a place of study or madrasa. This is a this is a clear evidence of Bakhtiyar Khilji destroying Odantpuri and Vikramsila. Though the description here is only about Odantpuri. Now, Nalanda is just 10 kilometers away from Odantpuri, and Odantpuri is a new monastery. It's built by the Pala dynasty. So you have Nalanda is the mothership, it's the mother of all monasteries. It's the most famous of all the monasteries. So it is improbable that he would not go to Nalanda. But there is no historical evidence, or so far it has not been discovered because of the lack of translation of the texts. Because I'm sure that monks who would have fled the raid of Bakhtiyar Khilji would have written about it. But we do not have a historical evidence because there has not been much translation from Tibetan and other memoirs or the writings by the monks. But we have another evidence where in this is happening in 1193. But you have there is this Tibetan monk called Dharma Swami who comes to Nalanda in 1235. So almost like you can say about 40 years later than the raid of Bakhtiyar Khilji of Udantapuri. And he goes to Nalanda and he finds, he gives a complete description of what was happening at Nalanda. And he says, the Tibetan Dhamma Swami says Muslims have overrun Magad, but yet were not successful in establishing a stable political system. The Muslim soldiers were roaming around Magad, causing consternation among the people by their loot and exactions. When Tibetan monk Dhamma Swami was returning to Tibet, he met two such soldiers in the ferry boat across the Ganga who demanded gold from him. And when he threatened to complain to the king, they became wild and snatched away the begging bowl of Dhamma Swami. Now he says that this uh, he gives Dhammaswami tells us about this what was happening at Nalanda at that time. So he says that he stayed there for 6 months at Nalanda and gave an eyewitness account of the Mahavihara, stating that it had 7 temples, 14 large and 84 small viharas, which were damaged by frequent raids. Out of these, only two viharas called Dhanava and Gunava were barely functional. The Mahavihara's perimeter wall was still intact, and the paintings of Tara and other Buddhist deities adorned its gates on the east and west side. Monks residing there had left for safer places. Only Rahul Sri Bhadra, the head of Mahavihara, who was 90 years old, lived there, and with 70 Buddhist monks receiving education under him, and a Brahmana disciple named Jayadeva. So there were 70 Buddhist monks and a Brahman, Jayadev, who was living with Rahul Sri Bhadra. And Mahavihara received some patronage from the king of Pithipati dynasty of Bodh Gaya, named Buddha Sena. According to Taranath, regular and sustained raids by the Turuska or Turks armed band massacred many monks at Nalanda, and many fled in hordes. He adds, Pandita Sakya Siri went to Jagdala in Odisha in the east. He spent 3 years there and then went to Tibet. The great Ratna Rakshita went to Nepal. Some of the great Panditas, like the great teacher uh, Nana Karagupta, along with 100 minor Panditas, went to southwest of India. The great scholar Buddha Sanmitra and Dasabala's disciple Bajrasan, along with minor Panditas, fled to the south. The 16 Mahanthas, including the scholars Sangha Masif Janana, Rabi Sri Bhadra, Chandraka Gupta, along with 200 minor Panditas, went east to Fukan, Munan, Kambos, and other places. Thus, the law became almost extinct in Magad. This is the last account we hear from Dhamma Swami, who visited Nalanda in 1235. And he says that Nalanda was again attacked by Turuskas of Odantapuri, because Odantapuri had become the headquarter now of the Turks. Jayadeva was arrested. The Brahmin who was living at Nalanda was arrested and put in prison by them, where he learned about their plan to raid Nalanda again. He succeeded in alerting Pandit Rahul Sri Bhadra about their plan, and all the 70 monks studying there left the Mahavihara, except Dharma Swami. He adds that both of them hid themselves in the temple of Jnananatha. A band of 300 Turuskas marauders raided Nalanda Mahavihara. However, they could not find them. They could not find Dhamma Swami and his teacher Rahul Sribhadra and returned with whatever they could gather. So you see this is what is happening at Nalanda in 1235. The raids are still going on. So it is improbable that Bakhtiyar Khilji would not go there. Circumstantial evidence clearly confirms that Bakhtiyar Khilji would have gone to Nalanda, but Nalanda was so large that it was impossible to destroy it completely, raze it to the ground in one or two go, even after dozen of raids.
Do we have
So,
evidences of this story when people say that the library of the Nalanda was burning for 9 months or 10 months because it had so
no,
many knowledge?
see, first of all, that Nalanda's library has not been discovered yet. You know,
Excuse me,
the
the library is not being discovered. How is it possible? That
no,
means that means it didn't exist.
no, it means it existed because when Xuanzang he returned from Nalanda, he copied 700 and he copied with him 657 texts, and he had come to Nalanda, to the great library of Nalanda, to copy the Yogachara Sutra, Yogachara Bhumi Sutra. When Itsing, another Chinese traveler, went back to China, he copied 400 Sanskrit texts from Nalanda. So there is a confirmation that these things show that there was a great library at Nalanda. But during the excavation, because Nalanda, only certain part of Nalanda has been excavated. Nalanda is not completely excavated. So it's possible that the library of Nalanda has not been excavated yet, or library was burnt or razed to the ground, and or books were taken away by the monks and burnt, so who fled to different parts of India. So you have this, there are various possibilities, but about the library, I will tell you, there is a complete. I have written about the library
Yeah.
also, and
The-
library was known as Dharmaganj, and it had three buildings: Ratna Ranjaka, Ratna Dadi, and Ratna Sagar. And one of these were 9 storied tall. Uh, this is right. This is written by. This description is given to us by the uh, the the Tibetan scholar Taranath. He says that during his stay at Nalanda, Xuanzang collected 657 sacred texts, while Itsing collected some 400 Sanskrit texts. Though no archaeological evidence has been found yet of the three great libraries of Nalanda Mahavihara during excavation carried out so far, it becomes evident from the large number of Sanskrit texts collected by both Xuanzang and Itsing during his stay in Nalanda that there must have been a large repository of Sanskrit manuscripts at the Mahavihara with the facility and manpower to copy them. As per the Tibetan accounts of Taranath, Nalanda possessed a well equipped library, which was known as Dharmaganj, the mountain of truth, which contained three divisions: Ratnadadhi, the sea of jewels; the Ratna Sagar, the ocean of jewels; and the Ratna Ranjaka, the jewel adorned. Ratna Sagar was a 9 story edifice. Its rich collection included rare sacred texts such as Pragya Paramita Sutra and Tantra books like Samaj Guhya, among others. So this is what is the description about the library.
Again, great loss, Abhay. What a great loss. What a great loss. I can't stop myself from saying this. What is last to conclude? What is the one lesson or one takeaway that you want we as Indians should know after knowing the story and the history of Nalanda? I want you to give us one clear takeaway because we have lost something magnificent. What's the
So
learning?
I think each one of us, I would say that at least visit Nalanda, to at least as a kind of pilgrimage to at least express the sorrow and the loss our civilization has undergone through. So, and at least now, do not to neglect knowledge, or institutions of knowledge. I mean, I think though Nalanda was lost, but the lessons of Nalanda are still there. The principles of Nalanda are still there. So, are we going to follow the principles of Nalanda? So, Nalanda also has made huge contributions to the idea of conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And I have written about it that Nalanda, Nalanda had this great Nalanda tradition uh, of democratic principles. And it says, interestingly, Itsing in his accounts notes that rules and regulations governing life in the monasteries were stricter at Nalanda than elsewhere. The administration of Mahavihara, which was the largest in the world, was done by the entire body of monks on democratic principles, including the annual assignment of rooms to monks, the trial and punishment of any offences, and the expulsion of those found guilty. Allocation of rooms was done on the basis of seniority. The new entrants and senior monks had harmonious relations among themselves. So there was no ragging. And any dispute was resolved through discussion, which became the Nalanda tradition of resolving conflicts. Can today's world can be learned from Nalanda? And also about universalism and freedom of belief. Monks of all major and minor Buddhist sects, as well as non-Buddhists, came to study at Nalanda and engaged in debate and discussions as Xuanzang notes above. Nalanda became a peaceful battleground for various philosophical strands, ideas and thoughts, sects and creeds, who engaged in arguments and scholarly debates. Despite acrimonious and animated debates and discussions, Nalanda never witnessed any violence among its monks. Xuanzang tells his disciple Huili, the priests dwelling here as a body, naturally or spontaneously, a dignified and grave, so that during the 700 years of foundation of the establishment, there has not been a single case of rebellion against the rules. So Xuanzang, see here himself, he is confirming that Nalanda was founded in first century AD, not fifth century AD, because Xuanzang visits Nalanda in seventh century AD, and he's mentioning that a dignified and grave, so that during the 700 years of the foundation of the establishment. So most of the people think that Nalanda was founded in fifth century AD you know, by the Gupta emperors. But Gupta emperors, all they did was to build their larger monastery, greater structures. Nalanda was a famous place much before that. Nagarjuna came to Nalanda in the first century AD. And therefore, Nagarjuna I consider as the philosophical founder of Nalanda. And before that, Emperor Ashoka himself in 3rd century BC. So here, intellectual and philosophical differences were a cause of celebration, and monks had the freedom of thought, expression, and belief. Is it possible today in our universities? The Mahavihara provided an atmosphere of freedom and tolerance, where any dispute could be settled through debate using the recursive argument method. This marked the first step in the process of scientific inquiry, laying the foundations of science in the first millennium CE. The winners of these debates were acclaimed universally.
Beautiful.
I think this is the message I would like to.
Beautiful.
And my concluding lines, which I write in this book, are that, when we have the revival of Nalanda, Nalanda has been revived today. We have a new Nalanda University, which was
Amartya Sen, which was supposed to be headed by him.
yes, but it's been inaugurated last year by our Honorable Prime Minister. And now it has students from more than 21 countries studying there. And it is an international university. It has a fabulous architecture, and which I have also given, photos in
Yes.
the. And I conclude that as our planet faces the triple threats of climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental pollution, humanity needs to make peace both with its inner self as well as with the fellow species, rivers and lakes, oceans, and all entities that support life on our beautiful planet. Nalanda's timeless tradition of imparting knowledge, wisdom, and kindness can guide humanity toward overcoming hatred, anger, frustration, and greed while fostering inner and outer peace. Thank you.
Beautiful, Abhay, beautiful. I mean, again, I would like to tell people that please, this should be celebrated. This should be read. It should be a national mission for people to know what you've lost, and for Indians to also realize that the Buddhist philosophy gave birth to scientific inquiry.
True that.
That is so important. In India, people should learn Buddhism, should read Buddhism. And you know what, Abhay, I got out after reading your book that I want to read about Buddhism.
True.
I want to understand that man. I want to understand the so many philosophical ecosystems. Now I know why the West is going gaga over Buddhism, Abhay. अब समझ में आ रहा है मेरे को.
बिल्कुल
ये
बिल्कुल
पागल क्यों हो रहे हैं बुद्धिज्म के पीछे? मुझे नहीं पता था कि क्यों पागल हो रहे हैं. They are going bonkers. All these scientists and all these inventors, they call themselves as Buddhist. And मैं कह रहा था ये क्या हो रहा है? हम ही लोगों ने हकार लिया, हमारा ही आदमी, हमारी ही philosophy, हमारी ही संस्कृति. And the world is accepting it and they are creating wonderful things out of it, Abhay.
True that.
And we have completely renounced it. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked
I had a wonderful time discussing Nalanda with you, talking about Nalanda, how it changed the world. And I hope that people who will listen to this will also enjoy and learn and get enlightened. Thank you.
Absolutely.